Hi everyone, Carolyn here, and tonight I want to address a question that came from a viewer, and the question was essentially, what's the difference between being trans and being gay? You know, where does the need to change gender come from versus just a person identifying as homosexual? And I actually really appreciate the asking of the question. I think it's the sort of thing that a lot of well-meaning people who maybe aren't exposed or haven't been exposed to ideas and concepts and realities about LGBT people much throughout their lives can wonder about, and that people maybe often are afraid to ask. And I'd much rather have someone ask and have an open mind and want to learn about this stuff than to sort of be afraid to ask and remain kind of confused about it. So, so I'm going to give my sort of best, just really straightforward and kind of simple and somewhat superficial answer to the question. It's of course it's a question or that people could spend a long time answering, and have written about and talked about a tremendous amount. But I'm going to try to just keep things pretty simple, and I'm just answering the question as best I can personally. If I apologize to anyone out there who may feel that I don't give the question the best answer or the most correct answer, or the most in-depth or academic answer. If anyone, I do. If anyone has issues with the vocabulary that I use or anything in the way that I try to answer this question, I apologize in advance. I'm just sort of making a good faith effort to answer the question as best as I can. So I know that the person who asked this question knows a thing or two about video games, because he knows me from the site where I work. So I guess one way to kind of think about this is, imagine, for the sake of just this concept, imagine that there's a game, maybe some sort of role-playing game in which you're creating characters, or a player, someone is creating characters, and the characters have all kinds of different traits, like they do in many games, whatever sort of stats you want to imagine, intelligence, strength, what have you, etc. But imagine that there's also a couple of sliders in the character creation process. One says gender identity, and one says sexuality. Okay, and they're two separate things. Okay, so on the sort of gender identity slider, you've got male and female, at sort of maybe opposite ends, but along that that slider, there's a whole range of kind of various degrees and sort of types of gender expression, right? So, because if you think about the men that you know, and maybe you yourself, or there's all kinds of men out there. There's you might be able to think of some really macho, tough guys, and you may be able to think of some sort of more sensitive guys, and the same thing with women. If you think about all the women some may be sort of very polite in their vocal mannerisms. Some may swear like sailors. Some may really enjoy kind of wearing dresses and makeup and heels and stuff. Others may, just much prefer wearing jeans and a t-shirt. So now, and so the men, if you were to ask any of those men, whether they're the more sensitive types or the more macho type, what does it mean to you to be a man? Why are you a man? What does that mean to you? They're probably not just going to answer with, well, I'm attracted to women, therefore I am a man. Right? One sense of what it means to be a man or a woman can be independent from one's sexual orientation, right? So gay men, right? Gay men identify as men just as much as straight men do, right? I mean, gay men do not want to be women. They are men. They identify as men. And, the same is true of, say, lesbians, of gay women. They don't think to themselves, oh, I'm attracted to women, therefore I really wish I was a man. They often are very comfortable as women and identify very strongly as women and are attracted to women, right? And if you were to ask a straight woman, what does being a woman mean to you? She's not going to say, well, I am attracted to men, therefore I'm a woman. Like, that's what being a woman means to me, right? Our gender identities are much larger than that. They're independent from our sexual orientations, right? Because, like, growing up, when I first knew that I was trans, I guess, so I don't know if I knew the word for it then, but when I was in school and things like that, it wasn't, the thought in my head was not, I'm really attracted to boys, therefore I'm a girl. No, not at all. It had nothing to do with any kind of attraction one way or the other, right? It was just a profound sense of knowing who I was in terms of my gender identity, and for me that happened to take a kind of traditional, perhaps feminine, female identity. I really wanted to be, at lunchtime at school, I longed to hang out with the girls, to be one of the girls, as opposed to feeling like I had to pretend like I felt that I fit in with the boys. And sure, I could hang out with the girls, but they would treat me differently and see me as their guy friend, and that's not, who I felt like I was, or who I knew I was on the inside. And, I mean, that's just one very narrow example from a whole life filled with such examples. So, so I guess just, try to think of sexual orientation and gender identity as two different things, right? I mean, there are also trans women, right? People who identify as women and transition to live their lives as women, who are attracted to women and then live as lesbians. And there are trans men who identify as men and transition to live their lives as men, who are attracted to men. So gender identity and sexual orientation are, yeah, they're two different sliders, you could say, on the character creation tool of life. Though, as just a kind of way of thinking about it, I'm not saying that there's literally, someone messing with our stats before we were brought into this world and determining these things. But I just trying to sort of convey that idea that those are just two different things. And obviously, for a lot of people, they're very much kind of intertwined. I mean, sexuality, sexual identity is for many, many people a very significant part of who they are, who we are, and that often does get kind of intertwined with gender, our gender identity. Okay, so that they do relate. They do often kind of connect and get tangled up with each other, but they're not entirely dependent. It's not like if you set someone to, attracted to men, to go back to my character creation analogy, if you set someone to attracted to men, the gender identity slider is going to lock in the female position, or vice versa, right? Both of these things are independent of each other and fluid and stuff. So, anyway, I hope that that goes some way to answering your question. If it didn't, I'm sorry, and please feel free to post follow-up questions. And yeah, thanks for asking the question. Thanks for watching, and have a good evening, everyone. Bye.